Welcome. Welcome to our conversation, which is called The Story Matters. We hope that's pretty clear and straightforward, and that you take that seriously, that we really do mean you. As it happens, you're not in the studio today with us, but you are in the audience, and you have a chance to listen. And we're really pleased today that the partner for this day is Glenn Goodwin. And Glenn's going to tell us a little bit about himself, so you know who's who's who here. Okay.
Oh, well, thanks, Len. What can I say? I'm almost 70 years old. I've been a professional musician most of my life. Graduate of Middlebury College, philosophy, theology major, so we have a little thing in common. And I've lived in Southern California for most of my life and played a lot of music there, and was very lucky, well, for many reasons. It's a great musical community out there. There's lots of very talented people. But also I got the opportunity to travel with music.
Travel across the country, across the world.
Well, I was pretty lucky. I didn't have to do the Midwest tours that so many bands do. You know,
Hey, now be careful. I'm from
know,
the Midwest.
Well, it's a long slog from one place to another in a rented van. So,
Yeah, okay.
as I'm sure some of the people out there may know.
Yeah. So the group you work with was how big?
Well, the group, I grew up with a lot of different people, but the one I'm going to tell the story about was a 4 to 5 piece rhythm and blues slash jazz slash rock and roll band fronted by a piano player named Bob Long, whose claim to fame was that he had won the Scott Joplin Memorial Ragtime Piano Championship in Sedalia, Missouri.
That's good stuff.
And so then he moved out to LA and became a session musician, and then to get away from the drugs of LA, he moved to San Diego, and that's where I met him. And we had a lot of great adventures together. He was a very funny guy, very talented, and he had a connection to a promoter in West Germany. This is back in the 80s when the wall was still up, and you know, and it was East Germany, West Germany, and the whole Iron Curtain block. And so this fella in West Germany was looking for American bands to promote on tours, and we said yes. We said heck yeah. And the distances, of course, in Europe are a lot shorter than they are going across the plains, so that was part of it.
It's a little harder to get to, though.
Yeah, this is true. This is true. Yep.
So this was a week, 2 weeks?
Well, it started out, the first tour was about 10 weeks.
10
I mean,
weeks.
you have to be out for a while in order to recoup any of the costs of travel and getting all the equipment there, and you know, and trying to make money on the road is pretty difficult when you don't have a big name, when you're just one of those semi-anonymous bands that just goes from club to club. So that's how we started out, going from club to club, playing a few festivals. And so, so that tour, we probably didn't even break even. We had a rented van, we had rented equipment. It was seat of your pants, kind of. Try to get a hotel with a gig. If you didn't, you have to pay for the hotel room yourself, which is money out.
Good by the money.
Yeah, So it was real seat of your pants touring.
Did you get into both East and West?
It took a few tours to do that, but that's where I want to go with this. Is the fact that our promoter was actually Polish, and he had connections in Poland with the jazz club there who wanted to bring in Western bands. Had to be sanctioned by the government, of course, and he also knew some promoters in East Germany, which had to be super sanctioned by the promoters. But he got us in. We did an 8-week tour of East Germany and Poland. And it had to be 1987, something like that, a few years before the wall came down. There were cracks. I mean, everybody was talking about freedom, but nobody was doing anything about it.
Well,
but it was an opportunity to see, obviously, a whole civilization that we barely knew anything about. You know, the East German police state, which wasn't apparently, it wasn't like armed guards everywhere. So there's armed guards as you came into East Germany, but once you got past that, you had your government handler, who was usually a sort of a a drunken promoter type of guy who he didn't care for the government either, but he had a good gig with the government, and he just sort of kept you in line, kept all the things going.
Right.
But it was really interesting because some of the places we played include the Dresden Opera House.
Oh.
Here's this rock and roll band from California suddenly on this beautiful, and the seats and the like a giant wedding cake type of interior and everything, and the easiest schlep ever. A schlep is when you have to carry your equipment into the gig or carry it out of the gig, and the schlep was the easiest ever because the van would drive onto a ramp and onto an elevator, which would lift the van up onto the stage. And you'd unload the van right where you're going to play, and then the van would drop down again out of sight, and there you are like that. Yeah.
So why don't you just continue taking us down that road with
that very bumpy, broken...
Wherever you want to go, because the other day when we were in this meeting, I remember hearing you say to others, and you said this with real enthusiasm, and that was... But at the heart of it for me is music.
Oh yeah, it's true.
And so that caught my attention because I love music too. I can't perform. I used to, high school, junior high, you know. But love music and.
Oh yeah, if people didn't love music, there wouldn't be any musicians.
That's right.
It's a definite two-way love affair.
Tell us all you want to tell us about that story.
Oh my God! Well, I could start off with just the enthusiasm of Eastern European people for music, just for live music, and of course we were not exactly freaks, but we were out of the ordinary for them. So we get big crowds wherever we went, and they were so eager to find out how did you learn, where did you find your material, and where did these songs, these old Jerry Lee Lewis songs and Ray Charles?
They weren't hearing that on the radio.
They weren't, but they were always underground. In Poland, there was a big jazz underground, and they were probably the hippest. Really deeply hip, and the Polish people are also very bluesy. They, as I experienced it, anyways, they have a deep sense of tragedy, and it's almost classical. You know, it's just like, of course, things are against us. We have to struggle, and so they're really good at playing the blues as a part of that. But the kind of itinerary would take us from one town. We'd play in a town hall, and then we'd be on a TV show, and then we'd go to another town and play. Like we played in the Leipzig Fair, the giant fair buildings for the communist industrial fairs that they would have. So these huge echoey buildings, and then we'd be in a little tiny jazz club next. And it would just go like that. And going to restaurants was interesting because you'd get this huge menu in East Germany. You'd get a huge menu, and you'd say, "Oh, hey, wow, I'd like some venison." No, we don't have that. I'd like some beef. No, we don't have that. What do you have? Chicken. Ah, and it was always chicken. Chicken and beer seemed to be the two.
But we have nice menus.
Very nice menus. It was more like a wish list, I think, than a menu. Yeah. We got to Poland, and Poland was a little more free. We were able to travel around. We went to some of the great, tourist sites, Gdansk and Warsaw, and the Black Madonna, and Hitler's bunker deep in the forest of Poland. It was totally destroyed by the Russians, of course, but then we'd play in the Polish jazz clubs and at the universities and on TV. And we played at a country western music festival up in northern Poland. It was almost right on the Baltic, and it was on a lake, and it was the Marlborough Country Picnic, I think it was called. And it was all kinds of bands. It's just an excuse to have a lot of performing acts. And Bob, the piano player, who also had a very strong classical background, played Chopin's Polonaise for a crowd of 5,000-6,000 people. And it was so quiet that it was like a classical. You could hear the little peepers peeping off in the distance outside. And when he got done, everybody, the entire audience, stood on their chairs and clapped. That's something I'd never seen.
Something
the intensity of love.
They didn't expect, right?
They didn't expect it, and one of their most beloved composers playing one of his most beloved pieces.
Oh, yeah.
Here's this American guy.
I can feel that.
Yeah, yeah. It was definitely a goosebump moment.
Yeah.
And music does that.
Yeah, oh, it does. It
You know,
really does.
that's the power right there.
And you play what instrument?
I'm a bass player. I
Bass
obviously
player.
have been. The funny thing about bass players is that when you're a kid in a rock band, there's 3 guitarists and no bass player. And obviously one of them has to give up the glory and the girls and lay down the bass, you know, lay down that low rhythm meets melody line, you know, and I chose to do it. I was the peacemaker of the band. Otherwise, I don't know, probably have gone on with no bass player for years.
Well, it's hard to it's hard really to conceive a no bass player.
I know it. Yeah, I know.
mean,
yeah.
Most people would.
Unless you have a really good boogie woogie piano hand.
Yeah, right.
They can really lay down a good line.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
so it was this. How many years did you go on tour like that?
Oh, consecutively, I think 5. I think altogether we did 6 tours of different parts of Europe, mostly Northern Europe. And of course, it was the kind of thing where at the end of the tour you say, I'm never going to do this again. It's too hard. Oh, I'm exhausted. And you have a little bit of money for it.
Right.
And then about 6 months later, you say, remember how much fun that was? Wouldn't you like to go out there and do it again? And everybody says, yeah, let's do it again. So, you know, off you go. And then as soon as you get into the van, you realize you're back in the same situation.
Right.
You were so happy to get out of 6 months earlier, but
what was I thinking? Right?
Yeah. But you said something about the passion about music, and it kind of reminded me of I don't know, it could have been Tom Petty anyway. Some rock musician said, you know, it's all about being on stage. The rest of it is just waiting. You know, it's just like you're waiting. Jackson Browne wrote a song about it, but you're just sort of waiting for that time when you're really truly 100% yourself.
Yeah.
And it's kind of hard to, you know, I mean, I suppose that for the professional musicians who are like sidemen and are going from one gig to another gig to another gig to another gig, they might experience less of that. But I've talked to a lot of those guys, and to them it's a job. It's like, yep, we're just doing a job. Of course, the job entails having, you know, your passion with it. But
so where do you find the story in music? I mean,
that's an interesting question.
where do you find the story?
Well, there's different lines. I mean, you know, there's always the lyrics and the actual lyrical presentation of what it is, you know, what it is the song is about. But there's other stories too. I mean, to me, one of the big stories is that whole thing of tension and release. Do you know about this? It's just one of the tricks of music is that you create a tension. You play some chords that just kind of jangle, or there's something weird, or it's intense, or something like that, and then you release it into this really nice, sweet sort of feeling. And that's one of the most effective things in music, is to get somebody all riled up and then mellow them out with, or make them feel like everything falls into place.
Is that a stance or a practice that goes back a long ways, or is that fairly innovative with?
I don't know. I can't be an expert on all music.
I know.
I'm an expert on my experience with music, and really that's about it. But
that's a big order.
Well, my experience about music is I started out doing it because I wanted to look good and I wanted to be accepted and, you know, and loved by everybody. And after a while, I realized that wasn't going to happen.
You wanted to look good for the young ladies.
Oh, of course. Well, I already gave up the guitar.
You were how old at the?
I was 15. I think I was 14 or 15 when I started. Yeah.
So you started early then.
Well, I was already playing trumpet. You know, one of those people who already learned how to read music. But the actual thing for me was the power of you know, the kind of like how should I say? It's not awesomeness, but the feeling that you get when you get deep inside music and suddenly this big room opens up inside the music. You know, you can feel it when you go to a concert. Sometimes you can feel everything is just going along, and all of a sudden, whoosh! There's a big opening.
That's a great image. Everything opens up.
That's how I feel it
in the music.
Yeah.
So it's not something that's happening like coming this way to you, your ear, but it's happening in the music. And then where are you?
In the music.
In the music,
I'm
right
not,
there.
I
Okay.
ain't nowhere else.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, you can see when it happens.
yeah.
And just back to this crazy, wild, crazy tour.
Sure.
You could see it happen to people who you wouldn't expect, like the security guards next to the stage. They'd suddenly start. You could see them start tapping their feet, and suddenly they'd be going kind of like this, and looking around and all that. And then you'd say, "Oh yeah, we got them too. We got everybody on board now." And so it's yeah.
And this was something that did it happen every night?
No, no, oh no. I think I don't know what percentage, but at least for me, half of my music career has been pure tedium as far as having hardly any people in a club, or just playing to the bartender and the wait people and wait staff.
Right.
So it's that's when you're rehearsing on stage, obviously. But there was always been a lot of that. I used to play 5 to 6 nights a week, and I couldn't expect peak experiences every night. Maybe half of them.
That's yeah. It's the saying is if you're doing what you really want, and you're doing it 40% of the time, that's pretty good.
That's encouraging.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it doesn't
you always
have
strive
to,
for it.
It doesn't have to be 100%. In fact, it can't be 100%.
Yeah.
Because we feel the pain.
Yeah.
So is there a lot of pain in music?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Talk about the pain a little bit.
Oh man. Well, I'll just take Fleetwood Mac as an example. That the Buckingham Nicks thing, Lindsey Buckingham and Stevie Nicks, in love, separated together, business partners and all that, and I think that's one of the great songwriting tools is to get yourself in a situation where you're vulnerable and hurt, and then write about it. And I think the music's going to sound more sincere, and it's also going to have more relatability to other people.
Do you find yourself writing music?
No, I'm sort of a mental arranger. I'll be playing music, and I'll hear where it needs to go, and I'll try to lead it there. So it's not like sitting down with pen and paper or at a keyboard.
Lead it there. How do you lead it there?
It's kind of. You're asking about my innermost secrets here.
Oh,
no,
sorry.
There's ways that the bass is really one of the lead instruments of a band, and you see a lot of bass players who have become band leaders, and it's the kind of thing that you kind of there are tools of pulling a band in a certain direction. You can just do it by the kind of pulse you set and sort of get the drumming, if you can get the drummer to drop into that, and trying to work with the drummer at all times anyways. But it's not so much about changing chords or changing rhythm or anything like that. It's just like you can tell a band something's going to happen. We're building up to something, or you could tell a band something's going to happen and drop way down. So there's all kinds of little secrets.
I went to one of the, well, not one of the last, but towards the end of Dave Brubeck's life. Went to his concert, and what I found fascinating the whole time was how in different songs he was doing a call and response kind of thing. He did it with almost every instrument in the band at some point. But the one that he had most fun was with the bass player. Those you could tell that those two guys were in sync, and just when you think, when I thought, oh, he's gone as far as he can go, nah. He puts a new twist in there, and the bass player smiles,
Oh yeah,
and oh yeah, and then the bass. It was a great night.
Wow. That goes all the way back to those cutting contests that jazz musicians used to have in the 20s and 30s and 40s. And
say something about the cutting contest.
I've never been to one. Well, I guess I have. We'd go to New Orleans a lot, so you see a lot of horn players sitting in, and it's essentially kind of like a strutting territoriality. I mean, I've got the chops. So yeah, well, I've got better chops. You can blow them away with that. Watch me. Watch this. And what a way to grow, I guess. You know,
Yeah.
but it's more, that's a lead instrument. Like for bass, I don't see bass as being the greatest lead instrument, only because so much of what the bass provides, it drops out as soon as you start doing a lead.
Yeah.
You know, and if you're not part of the pulse and part of that humming machinery underneath,
Right. Okay.
then that machinery is going to be not functioning on all 8 cylinders.
This is this is a great lesson in how instruments work and how the
Yeah.
music
Interplay.
yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. So
All right.
keep going
Oh, I'm sorry.
wherever you want to go. Yeah, in terms of more about your tour.
Oh, well, let's see. It's we did a lot of things with a lot of people. I mean, there was a lot of large audiences, and we got paid well, but only in East German and Polish money, which is worth nothing outside of East Germany and Poland.
Mm-hmm.
So the Polish money we gave away to an orphanage because it's not going to do us any good.
Yeah.
And the East German money, our agent took all the money we made in East Germany, maybe 500,000 Ostmarks or something like that, and he took them to the Klagenfurt piano factory in East Germany and bought a whole bunch of student pianos and put them on a trailer behind his Mercedes and put a tarp over them, just jammed them on a trailer, put a tarp, and then started back for West Germany. And he got back and he realized that he hadn't really put enough padding between the pianos, so they'd all kind of banged together over these rough East German roads, and he ended up with all these nicked and chipped pianos. So we came in from a whole week of touring. We were going to spend a day there and just work through some finances, and said, "Here, help me with this." And he handed us all black shoe polish.
Shoe polish.
And said, "Put this on the marks on the piano. Nobody must know about this. I'm selling these as new pianos."
So
and of course we helped him because we wanted the money. We were just
what was
putting the
he
money.
going to do with all those?
Sell them in West Germany. Much cheaper than a West German piano, obviously, but also a contraband. It's
Right.
really
Sure.
But he had his ways. Yeah. That's how it was so crazy. Was some of the most popular people we met were counterfeiters and smugglers. Just of simple, ordinary things. Kent cigarettes. That was a big thing. And they were like the smart ones who learned how to use the system in order to get something going.
Yeah. Well, I was thinking, now you and I are both now on the Middlebury Community Television Board.
And we are.
And this is really a priceless tool, and it's an opportunity. There's some difficulties if people read the newspaper about where the money might.
Right, the FCC.
Depending on where the FCC decides. But we have this responsibility within this community. So how would you like to see music in our community become part of what we might do in CSAT, in
MCTV, right?
Yeah, MCTV.
Right. Well, I think that the Festival on the Green is #1 by far with 5 stars. I mean, I love to actually go to Festival on the Green and then come back and watch it on TV, because you notice so much stuff that you didn't see when you were just there, and you get a different sound. You get the entire board mix of from everybody on the stage. So that's a really great thing. I would love to see. There's hardly there's Note is the only place in town that has live music, and that I know of. Maybe there's other, and I'd love to be disabused. But 51 Main, which became Rough Cut, that was the only other place that had live music, and I would love to see some way of making music and TV work together in Middlebury.
Right.
I don't know if it's a studio situation or a private party situation or a club suddenly decides to go bankrupt by hiring live music, or I joke about that, but it seems to be the way that nobody can really make a living as
I
a
think
club
that's
off of music.
Great question.
We're try to create a synergy.
Part of my focus is on storytelling. And
apparently so, because here we are.
And here we are. And this was just this program was just intended to say, okay, 2 or 3 people talking about their experiences and sharing, and what does it mean for life now, and what do you want? What does it mean for the future?
Yeah.
So I share with you this concern, this desire to have opportunities for people to participate, to really be involved. I think we feel good about a project that we're currently working on called Story Sampler. And we had 4 stories, all quite different.
Oh, I find.
The first one was our librarian doing a Little Red Riding Hood. And she's so animated, and she was so exciting, you know.
Oh, wow.
And I thought, if the little children aren't excited, I am, you know. And then the second one was a fellow who got into radio back when the days, because he wasn't an athlete, and he discovered that he and his brother, really have become experts in the whole field, and it made real sense to their life. And then the third was an animation created by the college, one of our professors and students. And it had to do with how people in our midst, migrant workers and a lot of others, feel like they're not connected, and they're not, you know. And then the fourth was a story by a woman who on hospice, Priscilla Baker.
Yeah, sure, of
and
course.
Priscilla told the story of her mother, and her mother connecting with her mother through music. So we see the possibility, and that would include music.
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely.
For doing something like that, or some other form like that, coming together. So that we can work out.
Yeah.
You know, that we can work out.
Working together, that's the way to go.
It really is. So as you think about as you put it in perspective, how has your life changed because of music?
Wow.
That's a big question.
It is, because I can't imagine life without it. I'd say it's just made me more curious. It's made me curious.
Made you curious.
Yeah, it kept my curiosity up.
That is a great line.
Oh, thanks.
And
it's probably not mine. I probably stole it from someone.
Well, it's all right. And we are at that point where we're out of time. We can continue to talk forever. We can talk again.
Okay.
We can talk in the MCTV meets. We can talk about as we talk to people in our community. But curious.
Yeah.
What a great quality that music would help bring that sense of. I remember that prompted me to think about going to the jazz place in New Orleans.
Oh, yeah. Preservation Hall.
Preservation Hall.
Yeah.
And on the wall there were pictures and sayings, and there was one about this big, really tiny, and it said, "May your joy be unrefined."
Ooh.
And I have thought about that and used that for a long time. So we'll put curious, make me curious, and joy unrefined, and we're on our way to good things.
Yes, let's hope so.
We are.
All right.
So thank you very much
You're
for
very
taking
welcome.
the time. It was good to talk. And it was good to have you here with us.